texted me, I should say, and said, but I also want to know, how do I know when I'm ready to date? And I thought, that is an incredible question. And I've never even thought to ask myself that. But just because your parents say you can date, or just because you found the guy to date, does that mean you're ready to date? And so for the last few minutes, I know it's kind of unfair because we're supposed to be talking about boys, but we're going to talk about you. So, spotlight's on. So, this list is when are you ready, okay? When you are dressing modestly. Oh, yeah, I went there. When you are dressing modestly. I talked to two guys who are out of high school, very godly, and I asked them, what do you wish high school and junior high girls could get? And they said, without hesitation, how much it matters what they wear. Guys are so visual, and we can't fully understand that, and that's okay because God wired it so differently. But they said, literally, Holly, if a girl is dressed inappropriately, without us even trying, we will have that image burned in our brains for months. When are you ready? When you are modeling the go attributes yourself. Okay? Like I said before, if you want a good Christian guy, be a good Christian girl. That seems like a fair request, okay? When you're modeling the go attributes for yourself. Number 3, you are ready to date when your boyfriend won't change your identity. How many of you have seen Runaway Bride? Awesome movie, Julia Roberts, super fun. The name of it is Runaway Bride because literally 4 different times she gets engaged and makes it to the altar and then runs out of the church. Those poor men. And so, I'm going to kind of spoil the ending for y'all. The guy that she does end up actually marrying, he looks at her and he says, the reason why you run is because you are changing who you are for every man. You don't even know who you are. With the first guy, he was this great outdoorsman, so she loved to camp. With the second guy, he was this nerd, so all of a sudden she loves computers and books. And so she would change her identity for every guy she was with. And then on the day of her wedding, she would bolt. Which is a good thing, because she would have married the wrong guy. But you are ready to date when your identity will not change based on who your boyfriend is. 1 Corinthians 12:14, you don't have to turn there, I'll read it. It says, for the body is not one member, but many. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole were hearing, where would the smell be? Basically, what Paul is saying is, there is a reason that we are all different. And just like the spiritual body of Christ, you have different roles. In your marriage, in your relationships, you'll have different roles. Aaron and I are as different as night and day. And I bet if you talk to the married women in here, most of them would agree with you. But we didn't change our identities to become like our husbands, and they didn't change their identities to become like us. Instead, we let them irritate each other to no end. But that's how God designed it, because it sharpens each other. Number 4. When are you ready to date? When your standards won't change, but your specifics will. Okay? Standards are your go list. They're servants, they're selfless, they're loving, they're kind. Specifics are, I want to marry a 6'2", blonde-haired, blue-eyed, extremely tanned surfer who also plays the guitar, rides a horse, has a sports car, $1 million in savings, and writes me songs every night before I go to bed. Who wouldn't want to marry him, right? When I was in high school, I was convinced I was going to marry a surfer. Aaron teaches musical theater. Okay? A little different, right? My specific changed. My standard didn't. He's an incredible, godly guy who loves the Lord with all his heart. But my specific changed. When are you ready to date? When you are willing to break up. When you're willing to break up. God always has to be number 1. In Genesis 22, we read the story of Abraham and Isaac. Do you guys know who that is? Show of hands. Yeah? What does God ask Abraham to do? Sacrifice his son. And the verse in Genesis 22, verse 2, when God speaks to Abraham, it's heartbreaking and so interesting at the same time, because God says to Abraham, Abraham, take your son, your only son, the son whom you love, and sacrifice him. God knew exactly what he was asking Abraham to do. He said it. Your only son, the son whom you love. The son who you waited for years. The son that required a miracle to be born. The son that you have watched grow up for the past 12 to 14 years and that you are so proud of and that I have promised generations to come from. Take that son and go sacrifice him. And you know what the next verse says? So the next morning, Abraham got up and took Isaac and they went to Mount Sinai. God was worth it. And as Abraham was raising the knife to sacrifice his son, God stopped him and said, you passed the test. Stop. I had to make sure I was still number one. And God requires that same love and dedication from us. Before Aaron and I got married, we started talking about marriage, which most couples do. Most likely, when your fiancé proposes, you will have already had at least one conversation that y'all would like to marry each other. Just sorry if that's a total spoiler for your future. But very rarely anymore is engagements completely out of the blue. And so Aaron and I, we had started talking about the possibility of getting married, and I was like super excited, and I was in love. And there was one particular week where we had talked the most we had about it. Like, it was the longest conversation that we had had about getting married. And it was pretty much like, we're going to get married. And I was doing my quiet times, and the Lord started impressing on me, as much as I tried to avoid it, the fact that I hadn't really gotten permission from God. I had just been going with my heart. And not that that was a bad thing, because Aaron hit all of the GOAT attributes, obviously. Amazing Christian guy, but still, I needed to know from the Lord, yes. And so, you can check in my journal, one of the hardest things that I have prayed and written was, Lord, if you want me to break up with Aaron, I will. But I'd really like to marry him. But I need to know from you that I am obeying, that he is the one for me. And so, I actually emailed Wes, who did our ceremony in Oklahoma, this story, and he actually read it in our wedding. But, so I prayed that, and I kept praying it, as much as I hated it. And a couple days later, the Lord brought me to 2 Corinthians chapter 6. If you want to turn there, go ahead. If not, I'll read it. And it was really cool, because I've been going through 2 Corinthians for my quiet time, and God's timing and what you're doing in your quiet time is always perfect. And so 2 Corinthians 6, verse 1, it says, working together with him, then we appeal to you not to receive the grace of God in vain. And verse 2 goes on to say, for he says, in a favorable time I listened to you, in a day of salvation I have helped you. Behold, now is the favorable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. And God, it was like God was saying to me, yes, Holly, now is your day. You have waited and waited and waited some more. Now is your favorable time. Now is when the blessing comes. My grace is being poured out on you right now. And through that, I had total peace and total confirmation I was in the Lord's will. And so, ladies, that is the purpose of why I tell you what I tell you. Because I want you to have that. I want you to have total peace that you are marrying the man that God has brought into your life. That you are marrying the man that you should be with forever. Because marriage is actually supposed to make you holy. It's not designed to make you happy. Yes, happiness comes from it. But the ultimate purpose is to make you holy. Because the man that you spend forever with will have the greatest influence on your life.